Hey everybody, welcome to another episode from Bill Sky, the Assembly Guy. Today what we're going to do is we are going to install a virtualization slash hypervisor on our Windows 11. And this is exactly the same procedure for Windows 10 and Windows 10, Windows 11, also Mac, Apple Mac. So the process is all the same. Now, what we need to do is we need to download a program called the hypervisor. And there's a lot of them out there. Probably the most successful financially is one called VMware. However, that costs money. The free version has a lot of things that that are not enabled for it. So there's another one called VirtualBox, which is completely free. It was open source for years, and then Oracle America took it over, and they've actually been making it much better over time. So what we're going to do is we're going to download that. We're going to download a Linux install disk. And then what we're going to do is we're going to install Linux on our Windows 11. So with that said, let's get going. All right, so I'll go ahead and start my browser. You can use any browser for this. We're just going to download the VirtualBox. And I'm going to do a Google search on VirtualBox. And you could say VirtualBox download maybe. And I'm looking for the Oracle site. I never select these ones like TechSpot. I want to go to the actual source. So I'm going to go over here to Oracle VM VirtualBox. Notice it's oracle.com. So I'm going to click on that. I'm going to come down. Now I'm on Windows. If you're on Mac, you want to download that. If you're already on a Linux, you want to download that one. But what we're going to do is, in this case, we're going to download the Windows installer. And the installation goes pretty quick. All right, so now I'm going to go to my downloads folder. And there's VirtualBox. In this case, it's 7.0.10. I'm just going to double click it. Say, yep, I want to install it. Next. I'm just going to select next on all of them. Just say yes, yes, yes. I had some other installation going on there. I'm not sure what that was. All right, and I'm going to click Finish. Now, I put an icon up here on my top left. Now, before we actually do anything with it, we want to make sure that we download the Linux that we're looking for. So I'm going to bring my browser back up. And this time I'm going to open up a new tab, and I'm going to type Mint Linux download. Now, there are a lot of different flavors of Linux. Mint Linux is the one that I prefer when I'm teaching because it's a lot like Windows 7. It's a lot like Windows 10 in its user interface. It doesn't have a strange graphical user interface. Ubuntu, now it's built on Ubuntu, and Ubuntu is probably the most popular. But Ubuntu has a little bit of it has a different user interface in desktop environments. So you want to make sure that you use something you're comfortable with. This all works on Ubuntu as well, but we're going to do Mint Linux. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the download Linux Mint. It's linuxmint.com. So I'm going to click on that. And we've got three choices. We've got Cinnamon, Mate, and XFCE. Those are all different desktop environments. They're not so different, but they're different enough. Some people have preferences. I'm going to download the Mate edition. And then I'm going to scroll down. Let's go to, we have to find a place where we want to do it from. Let's do James Madison University. Now what all these are is that those are locations on the internet that Linux Mint has decided to allow people to mirror their downloads. So it takes a lot of pressure off of the Linux Mint organization. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and let that download complete. All right, now that the download is complete, first of all, what is it actually we downloaded? I'm going to minimize my browser, and there it is right there. It is an ISO disk. Notice it ends with .iso. It is a disk image file. What an ISO disk is that it's like a DVD, a Blu-ray, or a CD-ROM, but it isn't actually the media itself. It's as a file on your hard drive. It's kind of like a zip file in a way, but it has everything you would need to boot it in your virtual environment, and that's what we're going to do here. Now, there's one additional thing you might want to download from Oracle, and they changed their download screen a little bit. But down here, there's a VBox guest editions. You might want to click on that, and that will download that guest editions. And let's make absolutely sure. VirtualBox extension pack, I'm going to click on that. And you can use it with any, so I'm just going to go down and actually we want to do the most, so I'll go ahead and click on that. Okay, so we've got all the parts that we need for VirtualBox. So I'm going to go back to the download folder. Here is my extension pack. I think the guest editions, we're going to leave that alone for now. You would actually download that inside of the guest operating system, which you'll see in just a moment. But let's go ahead and double click on the extension pack. That will load up VirtualBox. I'm going to say upgrade to get the most recent. Now what this extension pack does is it allows the host operating system, in this case Windows, to talk almost seamlessly with the guest operating system. In this case is going to be Linux. Okay, so there is our VirtualBox, and we also have the ISO file for Linux Mint, which is what we're going to use to install. All right, so let's create one. I'm going to click on the New button, and I'm going to give it a name, Linux. Let's call it a Linux Mint 21.1, 64-bit. I leave everything default, and just make the Linux, type Linux and the version Ubuntu, and I'm going to say next. 2048. Now this is where you're telling your operating system or your hypervisor what is the amount of memory you want your operating system to use. 2048 is fine for Linux. We do need 2 processors, so I'm going to knock that up to 2 and click next. And the next is it's going to create a virtual hard drive. It's going to, like as if it's got its own hard drive, physical hard drive. And I always like to make that 40. Now, one thing about this virtual hard drive is that it's not going to be fully allocated. It's going to grow up to 40 gigabytes. So it might start at like 5 gigabytes, but it'll get bigger as you install things. All right, let's click next. And double check everything. We've got 40 gigabytes. We've got 2048 memory, 2 processors. Looks good. I'm going to click finish. Okay, now we're getting ready to actually start the install. We've created the virtual operating system folders and files and everything, but now we actually have to do the install. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on my Mint Linux. I have another one up here that I did earlier. This is the one that we're doing right now. And I'm going to click on Settings. I'm going to go to Storage, and this is where I load my DVD drive. So I'm going to click on this little empty. I'm going to click on this little disk icon, choose a disk file, and then I'm going to find my Mint Linux. There it is right there. Click Open, click OK, and then I'm going to click Start. So what I just did was it's as if I had put a DVD into the Mint Linux virtual DVD drive. Now, the newer virtual boxes have these little panels that come out, notification panels, and there's this little X icon. To get rid of those, just click on that. Okay, so there's our operating system. Nothing's been installed yet. It's waiting for us to make a decision. I'm going to click inside of the window, and VirtualBox gives me this message is that you've clicked inside of the window, so the mouse will be captured by the guest operating system. To get out of that, you press the host key. In this case is the right control. So I'll click capture, and now I can use my keyboard. I'm inside the guest operating system. This is as if I'm installing it on a computer, and I'm going to press enter. Now I've got my mouse inside of the guest, but I really don't have it. If I press my right control key, I now have it outside. So we're going to go ahead and let the CD-ROM or the DVD drive boot up. Looks good. Says connection established with the network. That's awesome. And then we see the install Linux Mint icon. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to double click on that. And we're going to go ahead and start the installation. The installation, 20 minutes, maybe 15, depends upon how fast your computer is. But you're going to have a real Linux operating system running from within your Windows. And as I said earlier, this is much the same as on Mac. So ask me what language, English. So I click continue, what the keyboard layout. I'll leave it all default to English, English US. Click continue. It asks me if I want to install the multimedia codecs. That just means if I want to play DVDs or if I want to do like special audio files on my Linux. I'm going to leave that unchecked and just click continue. You're welcome to turn that on. It will increase the amount of time it takes to install the operating system. But if you really want to play with your Linux as if it's your main operating system, that may not be a bad thing to do. Okay, it asked me if I want to erase the disk. I'm just going to say install now. I'm going to say continue. It asked me for my time zone. So the operating system has begun to install. It asked me for my time zone. I'm on the West Coast, so I'm going to keep that. I can click anywhere I want, but I'm going to click on the West Coast and click continue. It's now going to ask me for my name. Now, on a virtual system, I like the name to be the same. You can do whatever you want. So in this case, I'm going to just type Linux user. I'm going to tab down to pick a username. I'm going to call it Linux user. My password is going to be just password. That's not a safe password, but it's a virtual machine. I'm not going to be doing anything special on it. I'm not going to be using it as a server. So there's nothing wrong with that. I left the computer's name just default. You can name it anything you want. And I'm going to click continue. So now the operating system is going to copy files. It's going to it's going to configure it. It's going to get it all set up. And while that's working, I'm going to do something else, and I'll be back when the installation is complete. All right, welcome back. The installation is done. Took maybe about 5 or 6 minutes. This computer I've got is pretty quick, so it might take a little bit longer on yours. What I like to do when the installation is complete, I just like to click on continue testing. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to force the operating system to shut down. And the way that you do that is you come down here to the start button and you just say quit. And then you say shut down. So you can see it looks a lot like Windows. Now the reason that I do that is because I want to remove the DVD media, the ISO file that we downloaded. And if you notice, it just asked me to press enter, and I clicked in there and I pressed enter. It's shutting down. Okay, so it's been shut down. Now I'm going to go and I'm going to click on settings. I'm going to go back to storage. And it looks like it ejected the ISO file for me fine, no problem. Okay, great. Now, something that's really slick about virtualization is I can now take a snapshot. I can now take a picture of a moment of time of that operating system, a brand new install with nothing else installed. And the way I'm going to do that, I'm just going to click on the take button, and I'm going to name that snapshot, nothing installed. And there we go. Now, why did I do that? Well, what if I begin installing stuff on the operating system, on the Linux operating system, and I screw it up, right? And it won't boot anymore. Well, on a real computer, you'd be stuck. You'd have to reformat the drive. What a nightmare, right? However, on VirtualBox and VMware and Hyper-V and all these hypervisors, all you have to do is go back to that snapshot. In that case, nothing installed. And if you notice, I can click on restore if I want. But because we just created it, I'm just going to go ahead and start it back up. Now what we're going to do is we're going to finish the installation, make sure it looks good, and then I'm going to show you how to install all the development tools that you need to be able to do assembly language programming. You'll also be able to do C and C++ programming. Now I always get students ask me, why do we go all through this at the beginning of my semesters? However, at the end of the semester, no student wants to touch Windows anymore. They want to do all their work on Linux. It's faster. There's more tools. They're easier to get tools. And I kind of hope you feel the same way. So when the operating system begins, when the Linux operating system begins to ask for a password, and I just typed in my password. All right, I'm tired of looking at this. And then we see our welcome screen. So that is our operating system. Now the first thing you want to do is you want to open up a terminal. Down here you'll see this little black icon. I'm going to open up that terminal and I'm going to type the command sudo superuser space apt update and press enter. It's going to ask me for my password. I type password. And what this is doing is it's updating all of the software repository catalogs on this operating system, because the apt program is how we install things on Mint Linux. So now I'm going to say sudo apt upgrade. We want to upgrade the operating system. It's going to install and download 586 megabytes of stuff. So we want to make sure we have the most recent tools and operating system security fixes before we do anything. Okay, now that the installation of the updates is done, let's install our development tools. There's only a few statements that we have to issue here. So I'm going to type sudo apt install build essential. Now it's build-essential, no spaces in that. So we say as a super user, I want to run the apt program, and I want the apt program to install build essentials. And say yes. So this is going out on the internet. It's going out on the software repositories for Mint Linux, and it's downloading everything you need to be able to build and make C and C++ programs. In fact, if I want to type G++, you can see that is my C++. If I type GCC, that is my C compiler. LD is a linker. It says no input files because I didn't specify any input files. So we've got our basic build essential. But now we want to install the assembler. So I'm going to press my up key. Instead of build essential, I'm going to type NASM. And now that's our NASM assembler. A couple other things I want to install. Genie. Genie is a fabulous editor on Linux. I'm going to say Genie, I believe it's plugins. Yep. So we'll do language parsing and things like that. Very nice. Now there is a script that I will put a link on this video that you can download and execute once to install everything. But it's not a bad idea to get used to doing this. And then there's another one, ghex. Ghex is a nice little graphical hexadecimal editor. And we may also want to install DDD. Data Display Debugger, I believe is what that stands for. And let's say if KDBG is out there. KDBG is my favorite debugger. And KDBG is not out there. However, in the script that I will make available to you that you can execute, instead of doing these commands one at a time, it will actually download the most recent KDBG debugger and install it for you. And the way that it does that is you download the source code, you build the source code, and then it generates it. Or it actually installs it that way, excuse me. So let's test our NASM. I can say NASM version. It tells me the version of NASM, that's cool. What is the version of my linker? It tells me the version of that. So I kind of think that's one other thing we might want to install is Xterm. Xterm is what you're looking at right here, this little window, that is a terminal window. And Xterm is a different type of terminal window that I believe DDD, the DDD debugger, uses. Okay, so I'm going to exit out of this, and now let's take a look at our Genie editor to make sure installed okay. There's my Genie editor. Genie is not an integrated development environment. It is not a compiler, but if you're using makefiles, you can build your projects with makefiles, which is what we're going to be doing in this course. So that's pretty cool. So there you go. So you're all done now. Now, one thing you might want to do is you might want to right click, and well, you really can't do that there. So I'm going to click on the start button again, and I'm going to click on this, or I'm going to type display, and we might want to change the resolution of our display. So right now it's 800 by 600. I'm going to drop that down, and I'm going to give a nice comfortable 1440 by 900 and click apply. Keep this configuration. VirtualBox was very nice. It gave me a nice, it resized it for me. And then I'm going to close. So the last thing I want to do after I get all of my tools installed, I'm actually going to go and shut down by doing quit and then shut down. And then I'm going to take a snapshot. And that snapshot is going to say development tools installed. And let me do a quick little demonstration. Now remember, nothing installed didn't have Genie. It didn't have GCC or anything like that. I want to go back to that point in time. So I'm going to click on nothing installed and click restore. It says, do you want to restore it? I'm going to turn off create a snapshot. Now if I start up this operating system, you're going to notice that none of the tools that we just installed are there any longer. And that's because we went back to a version of the operating system that didn't have any of those installed. And I'm going to go ahead and let that boot up just so I can show you. And then I'm going to jump back to the newer version that we just did where we installed all of the tools. And we'll go ahead and I'll show you that. I'll show you how those tools are indeed there. All right, so let's put our password. I'm going to open up a terminal, and I'm going to type I'm going to type GCC. Well, that was there, G++. Yep, G++ not found. So it's not there. What about NASM? What about Genie? None of those are there because we have gone back in time before we actually installed them. Now I'm going to say sudo shutdown now, and that is a quick little way to shut down my operating system. I'm going to click on development tools and say restore, turn off create a snapshot first. And now if I start this up, it will have all of our development tools. It also should have the resolution change that we made. And just to make absolutely sure that everybody understands, this process is exactly the same on an Apple Mac. It is exactly the same. The difference is that if you have a newer Apple Mac, like an M1, M2 Mac, it'll be just a horrible performer. The performance of the Intel operating systems on an M1, M2 Mac are just horrible. That's because Apple decided to go with a different processor. So I'm going to go ahead and load up a terminal. Let's type NASM. Here we go. There's our NASM. What about Genie? Genie's there as well. All right, awesome. So you now have your Linux set up, and you're going to use it to create assembly language programs in this course. So, excellent. Hope to see you in the next video.